Hi everyone, I'm here and to address everything about this tweet right here made by Rev Says Desu. My name is Hina. I'm a 18-year-old trans person who's been trans for almost 2 years. Um, and this is all I have to say to address everything that they've said. And I honestly personally think that Rev is very uneducated on this like situation and is just an uneducated mess for speaking onto this. So let me explain why and like mostly about this tweet right here. Quote, I made a post criticizing groomers who targeted vulnerable minors, trying to crack their egg, trying to convince confused children that they're trans. And this freak, describing Mia, made a light novel trying to justify this nonsense by claiming they were also groomed. Please reject this nonsense. Now, first, I'm not groomed. I wasn't groomed because you didn't read my entire life story. You took 3 lines out of my entire tweet of 143 lines and made it out of context. You didn't care enough to read my tweet. You didn't care enough to see the main point. You didn't care enough to see the bolded text I wrote. You didn't even care to you just looked at the slop of what other people are saying and then slapped it on. You couldn't even bother to read it for like 5 minutes. That's mainly what I addressed, and not even let me explain about how cracking eggs is not what you described as common grooming tactic, but is actually something that should be celebrated about. Because you actually have zero idea what egg cracking actually is. You've never had your egg cracked. You've never seen someone else get their egg cracked. You've never been in the trans community enough for egg culture and whatever or not. You've never ever had any of this. And I doubt you have any trans friends for what you've been posting and like trying to harass about trans people. I doubt you have anyone to actually tell you about any of this information. You just come to conclusions on your own, right? Like this is pure uneducated mess of someone who's just purely transphobic and that wants to make a tweet about this stuff. It's like just send harassment towards like other trans people who are supporting people just like them, right? And this is the main thing about that I want to discuss is yes, I've had my egg cracked by the help of others. That means help. When it was done when I was 16, yes. Is 16-year-olds capable of thinking? Yes. If is capable of thinking for themselves, thinking about their future, thinking about their lives, thinking about how they want to live? Yes. If you tell me no, you've been 16 at one point, right? Tell me. Like, you've been 16 at one point. Sure, you may have done a lot of stupid things, but you could have at least been capable enough to actually think about your life and how you want to live, right? And that's the thing. I had a lot of gender dysphoria when I was younger, right? A lot. And the tweet mainly described like what here, right here, right? It's mostly like after those lines that they saw, this entire thing was just cut off, right? And they described it as light novel. This is not a light novel. This is my freaking life experience that you completely ignored just so that you can make a tweet about me saying that my opinion is invalid and that like nothing no, and that I'm wrong. But here comes my life experience, right? This is the entire thing talking about my gender dysphoria, right? I was born in a strictly Asian household, right? I was born where I can't talk about this kind of stuff because I was strictly East Asian. Um, I was actually not even born in the United States, right? I didn't have any access to a woke culture. I didn't have any access to that until I was around 11 because I was so uneducated that I actually discovered it through the internet about trans people's existence. But still, being in an Asian household and being really young at the time, I still don't have the chance to speak up, right? But what's really important is that I described having gender dysphoria right here, right? And it's the biggest thing. I described having gender dysphoria. I described having jealousy of other trans people being trans out of their free will. So, out of envy, I went to ask questions about how they became trans, how they're able to express themselves. I asked what it takes to be trans. Like, do I have to go on? Do I have to immediately go take HRT, estrogen and blockers, hormone blockers and whatever, whatnot? Do I have to like go and do surgeries immediately to actually identify as trans? And the answer to that is no. Now, the biggest thing about people, about their you and them and like uneducated messes, is that Rev doesn't understand that becoming trans doesn't equal immediately going on hormones, immediately going on blockers, immediately, altering your life and like gender and whatnot, immediately going towards like surgeries. No, that's not what it is. You don't go on blockers immediately. You don't go on estrogen immediately. I've been trans for almost 2 years. I'm still not on blockers. I'm still not on estrogen. Right? I'm just trying it out. I'm going on estrogen soon. I'm trying to get myself access to it because I wasn't an adult. I'm finally an adult now. I'm trying to get myself access to it, right? And I was an adult. Like I turned 18 on December 5th of 2024, right? I literally turned 18 like almost 2 months ago, and I'm finally able to like actually see estrogen and blockers is like one of the options I can go for. But to become trans, you only have to transition socially if you want to try it. A person becomes trans when a person can become trans and have their egg cracked, because when you have your egg cracked, you become trans, right? Or like at least that's what it is in trans culture, right? You can't crack an egg if there's no egg in the first place, and the egg being gender dysphoria. Right? If you're suffering from gender dysphoria, you want to be the other gender severely, and you want to actually be trans, then or like you have thoughts about it often of just being the other gender, not just even wanting to be trans, just often, very often thoughts about gender dysphoria, not happy with your current gender and wanting to be the other gender. There's your egg. But if you crack it, that means the chicken comes out, which basically just, it's like the same thing as closets. You put a person in a closet, and if they don't feel safe to come out, then they won't come out. But if you tell them it's safe, then it's okay for them to come out. It's the same thing with closets. Eggs are basically just closets. If the person feels safe enough to come out from their egg, then boom, you go. There you go. You're trans now because, well, you can't turn someone trans who aren't closeting themselves due to gender dysphoria. Which is why egg cracking should be celebrated, because egg cracking means someone discovering themselves and solving their gender dysphoria. Right? They're accepting themselves. The first thing to cracking an egg is accepting yourself as trans. And that's the thing. Being able to accept yourself as trans is very important, because then you'll be able to continue to live and with fixing gender dysphoria. How a person becomes trans is to go through several, like it could be long time, it could be severely long time of just gender dysphoria, and then you feel like you want to be the other gender, right? Because if a cis person, which is a person who doesn't want to be trans, is happy with their own gender, can't become trans because, well, you can't convince them, you can't crack their egg when there's no egg to begin with, because you can't turn a cis person trans if they're happy with their current gender and never questioned it. And you decide what your gender is. That's the thing. You can decide. It's not a forced thing. You can't get groomed into your gender, because, for example, if you transition socially, right? Like if you tried out, like, oh, you suddenly wanted to be a girl, so you went out as trans on the internet. So transition socially, because if you transition socially, you can become trans without taking any blah 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 like medicine or surgery, without taking hormones, without taking blockers. Most people become trans socially for years, especially on the internet, where trans people come out and tell people about how they feel and how they identify, and they try it out on the internet until it works, and they've decided that, oh, this is actually for me, and I'm really happy about it. So I'm gonna consider hormones or life-changing, altering surgeries or whatnot. Right? You can always go back from transitioning socially. The first step of a trans person's steps towards transitioning is to transition socially. Now, there's a lot more things you can do that aren't harmful to your body when you're testing out if you're actually trans or not after coming out. You can try on girl clothes. If you're, for example, I'm male to female, which means that you can try on girl clothes, try makeup, try on different kinds of things in real life, doing certain habits that girls do, and just like you know, doing things that are feminine, expressing yourself femininely, and wearing feminine clothes, right? And trying to voice train, maybe. That doesn't cause harm either. Like, I did voice training at the start of my transition, and it doesn't cause any harm because I can swap my voice back and forth. Like, there's a lot of things about transitioning that doesn't cause any harm before a person actually decides if they actually want to or not, right? There's no pressure. You can always go back if it doesn't feel correct to you, or if you somehow decide that, oh, never mind, the gender dysphoria was all just curiosity, or if not, right? Educating people about trans minors is important. As a trans minor myself, I didn't get the education I needed, so I went to actual people who told me my answers. Yes, I was very lucky, but some people who suffer from gender dysphoria, a, a lot of people like that usually don't have a lot of will to live, and I'm the one that suffered from gender dysphoria from firsthand. And usually, a lot of times, they end up committing suicide or just giving up their will to live, and just they're just a hollow, empty soul with living in a body waiting to die. And that's how I felt, honestly. And that's why gender dysphoria is awful, and that's why becoming trans is important for people who do suffer from gender dysphoria, because that actually allows them to continue living their lives. And this is the biggest thing, is you need to stay educated about this. It's not telling minors or kids or whatnot to become trans. It's to tell them, educating them about how it's important to know that this is your options if you do suffer from gender dysphoria. It's okay if you suffer from gender dysphoria. It's okay to talk about suffering from gender dysphoria. It's okay to talk about how you feel when you suffer from gender dysphoria, because then you can actually seek the help that you need and not be shoved in a closet for multiple years of your not allowed to come out, not allowed to talk about the things and how you feel, and just living an empty soul and body until you die or commit suicide. It's okay. It's okay to be trans. It honestly is. And the most worst thing that I support is that I'm not actively out here to crack eggs. And my biggest thing that I want to talk about, my entire tweet here describing everything, was highlighted here, which was the point that was completely ignored by Rev because they didn't bother to read any of my tweet about my life story. But egg cracking can only happen when the person comes to you and have wishes or desires of being the other gender. So when someone else cracks a person's egg, it can only happen when the egg is there and that it is actually being able to crack. Like, you can't crack a random person's egg. Like, I can't just come up to you, like a stranger, and say, "Oh, I'm gonna crack your egg now. You're gonna become a trans person." That's not how that works. You have to already suffer from gender dysphoria for that to even happen. And cracking an egg should be celebrated because it helps someone come out from their suffering of gender dysphoria. And that's what I think should people in the tweet are saying, is that the person who said they're addicted to cracking eggs is addicted to the celebration of people who are coming out of the closet that they're in and finding out they're trans and being very happy. Because once you find out that you're trans and accepting yourself, it's a very warm and welcoming feeling that you finally feel right in what you are. You finally feel right and you feel happy about who you are, and you can finally explore and be who you are because you accepted the fact that you're trans, and you accepted the fact and accepted your own feelings, and stop denying them. Stop denying gender dysphoria, because I've been denying gender dysphoria for almost all my life because I couldn't do anything about it until I actually discovered that I can indeed become trans. Like I said here, well, egg cracking can't be done to someone who doesn't wish to be the other gender. No normal cis person can have their egg cracked and they're not cis, which means cis means that you're happy with your current gender and what you identify as. If you're not cis, that means you're not happy with what you are. And if you're not cis, then you can't have such desires to be the other gender, and you can't be trans. Or if you're cis, you can't be trans. Simple as that. And being what I finally want to be is when I had my egg cracked, is I felt like I can be what I finally can be. And I wish the others who suffer from how I felt could actually have their egg cracked too, because it actually helps save lives. Egg cracking helps save lives. It does. It really does. And that's the most important thing. But instead of reading my tweet, they just send they Rev in their community of uneducated people just come to me and send hateful messages calling me a groomer, a pedophile. Right? Now, by the way, I just turned 18 2 months ago. By the way, I graduate from high school at 19. By the way, I'm just saying. So I graduate in 2026. That means I'm still hanging out with minors. I'm still hanging out in high school. I still go to high school. Out of the 7 days of the week, I spend 5 days in classes with minors. And people are telling me I should stay the fuck away from kids. People are coming and telling me that I'm a groomer, I'm a pedophile, and I should not be allowed to be in contact with kids. Go, guess what? I've been going to high school for like 3 years. I graduate at 19 and a half. I've been going to high school for 3 years. I've been interacting with minors for 3 years. Not counting the other 9 years of education that I had beforehand. Right? Or 8 years of education I had beforehand. Right? So not only am I hanging out with minors, I'm talking to minors, I'm friends with minors in my school. I hang out, minors are all around me. So you directing this tweet towards me and calling me a freak and supporting pedophilia or not, this is not what I'm supporting. I'm not supporting pedophilia. I'm not supporting people being groomed, because this isn't being groomed. This isn't being pedophilic. Cracking someone's egg is helping them find their identity. It's something that should be celebrated about. And you have confused yourself with this as a grooming tactic, which is not. You are severely uneducated, Rev. You are severely uneducated on this topic. You should not be speaking on this because you have absolutely zero experience on this topic. You have absolutely zero experience. You have not lived the life of a trans person. You've never seen someone who's actually had their egg cracked. And I'm standing here out as a prime example. And by the way, I'm tweeting this not to say that I want to crack other people's eggs. I don't want to go up to a random stranger and be like, oh, I want to crack your egg and like turn you into a trans person. No, I don't want to do that. That's stupid. You're stupid for thinking that. I don't care enough to go to a random normal person and turn them trans. I don't care. You can live as how you want to be. But if a person came to me seeking for help, asking about trans questions, I'll answer them with the purity of my heart. And if it cracks their egg, so be it. Because then they can actually be happy with themselves instead of suffering from gender dysphoria and suffering for the rest of their lives. Because I knew how that felt. And you have zero idea of what that feels like, and you have zero say on this topic because you have nothing. Absolute fuck nothing, Rev. You're an uneducated piece of crap who's speaking on this topic. Thank you. Anyways, as I'm speaking, you sent your hateful community towards me. You sent your awful community that breeds hate towards me, calling me a pedophile, calling me a groomer. When in fact I have not been groomed. I asked questions and had them answered. I got educated about my problems. I already have these problems, and I got help that I needed because I got jealous and that I was indeed a trans person, except I just didn't know I was trans. I kept denying the ideology because of cis people and the hateful nature of people and the right wingers that keep shutting us down and saying that we're awful. I knew when I became trans, I was taking on a path which is I'm gonna get hated. I'm gonna be called disgusting. I knew when I took up this path that I was gonna be hated on. But I still took it anyway because it made me feel better. It made me feel about who I am. It made me feel like I was in the right place. It made me feel right. It made me feel like I want to contribute to society and I want to live. And you, an uneducated mess, making these tweets about these people, you are wrong. Egg cracking is not grooming. We don't want to turn random children, random people into trans people. We don't want them to suffer through what we suffer through. We don't want to give people gender dysphoria. We want to help those who are already suffering from gender dysphoria come out and to feel better for themselves and to stop suffering from gender dysphoria. And gender dysphoria can be suffered through all ages, proved by me through my experience that I was suffering from gender dysphoria for multiple years, starting when I was 8. Continued for multiple years. I kept questioning myself. At one point, it got so severely, I kept asking myself, I kept wishing to be dead because I was born male. And to wish that I would wake up in my next life or so whatnot to be born female. You are uneducated on this topic. You're an uneducated mess. Stop. Just stop. And your community, honestly. You should be the one apologizing for just this. We're not trying to groom kids into being trans. We're trying to help people, minors, adults, whatnot, either or, feel right about themselves. Egg cracking should be celebrated. At least that's what I believe what egg cracking is. Don't let other people twist the ideology of egg cracking. Egg cracking should only be done when the other person is suffering from gender dysphoria, when the other person is questioning themselves and their gender ideology. And you can't forcefully crack open someone's egg. They have to come to you. They either crack it themselves by finding out themselves, or they seek help from others and talk about it with deep conversations, and then figure out who they are by asking those questions about how they feel and having them answered by the correct people. It's not grooming. It's literally to help people feel better about themselves. Grooming literally means to exploit someone for sexual or whatnot, activities. And that's not what this is. This is not sexual. This is helping someone find out who they are. This is not sexual. Educating kids about this matter is important. It's very important. Educating minors to help them stop suffering from gender dysphoria. And you have no right to be saying anything about this. You have no right. And that's all I have to say. But yeah, no. Rev, you are uneducated on this topic. You should stop tweeting about this. You should stop hating on other people with your community. Stop sending hate towards other people with your community. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching, and if you learned anything in this video, then congratulations. Please stay educated and not be an uneducated mess like Rev Says Desu. And I've also done research on their videos on a lot of people exposing Rev Says Desu. You have to actually fact check Rev Says Desu and whatever they're saying. Or you'll just be like the sheep sent towards other people and hating on them. Because you have no idea what the hell they're saying. And you're just taking it for fact. And you're just being set. Please stay educated. This person is not educated. If you're following them and thinking that they're educated and taking all their words, then maybe you should check out different sources instead of taking all their words and just coming in and taking everything for fact and coming at me like an army. Because they're uneducated, severely, and I've proven that. And so, that's the video. Please stay away from this uneducated piece of mess.